Black history is world history. The truth of the matter is, uh, there's no aspect of life, there's no crevice of society where people who look like me have not made some significant contribution. So the celebration of Black history, the celebration of African American history is truly the celebration of a broader sense of history. There is no history without the inclusion of us.
When I think of Black history, of course, the first thing that I think about is slavery, our ancestors being in slavery, and to really see the progress that Blacks have made since the slavery days.
Black history is just the essence of our people. Good cultural statements, something that we fought for, something that we believed in, something that was basically a struggle for us to achieve and leave a legacy behind.
Black history is, for me, is to know and understand our culture, our ancestors, for us to acknowledge and let our children know what our ancestors struggled with, and for us to bring awareness as to how and what has been done for us to get to where we are today.
What comes to mind, black people as a whole is Black history. It's not just one person's fight, it's everyone's fight. To me, it's perseverance, determination, never giving up, always fighting for what you believe in.
When I think of Black history, I think of the waymakers that have created paths and innovative ways for people like me and younger individuals like myself to follow. From Greek letter organization, from professionals, inventors, and the people who fought for rights for us. To me, that's Black history, being the change.
Thinking back into Black history, of course, the first person normally comes to mind is Dr. Martin Luther King, because he actually taught all of us a lot, just going off of his basis of what he thought Christianity was, and of course our history and teaching us history and making history within itself. So I would say Martin Luther King, of course, but then I think about all of our great leaders within our community. I think about all of our teachers that have actually come before us, me being a former educator. I think about all of the African American teachers that have come before us and instilled in us certain things and certain ways that we need to carry ourselves. And I think about our parents, who were not too far removed from Martin Luther King's legacy.
Black history represents a lot of the accomplishments of our ancestors. It is a way for me to have a sense of pride in who I am, because I have learned that there are a lot of things that would not be if it wasn't for Black inventors and those struggles of Black people.
Black history means to me, it actually means that we're finally having an opportunity for some of our history to be brought to the surface. Because as you know, and I know, our history typically was left out of the history books. And to actually emphasize Black history, which we emphasize all the time, it gives us an opportunity to share with our kids and our families and the community at large the accomplishments of Black folks. Okay.
Growing up knowing that you were a minority in a community, it made you aware of the moves that you made.
There was a time when up the street at Kessler's Five and Dime store, up in the corner, up 2 little steps, was a little water fountain in the corner marked color. So any Black people in town, if you had a drink of water at Kessler's, you had to drink out of that fountain. And significantly as well, if we were in line to pay for whatever items we had chosen to purchase, and a white person walked up, we had to step back and and let them go first. So we've seen a lot of things happen. There was a drugstore on the block there called Lee King Drugstore. They had a soda fountain, but we couldn't go there to get it. So actually, you know, a black person in downtown Newnan at the time I was growing up needed to go to the restroom. There were only a couple of places that person could go. One down in the basement, a little bathroom marked color, and down East Broad Street in the next block was the black businesses. 2 black funeral homes, Roscoe Jenkins, Sellers Funeral Home, a cab stand, a barber shop, a food hall, a little restaurant. And you could go to the funeral home to use that.
I never in a million years thought that I would be a business owner, especially in downtown Newnan. Downtown Newnan was a place when I was smaller, even though segregation wasn't still, going on in so many words. But I remember going to the movie theater, which is the next street over. As a little child, I remember going in there and we couldn't sit in the spots that we wanted to sit in. We still had to sit in a certain place, but it didn't hit me that was segregation still until later on. And just thinking about that when I became a business owner here, I thought about that. I was like, just a couple of streets over, I couldn't sit where I wanted to sit, even though that was in the 70s. And here I am now, a business owner in downtown Newnan. God is good.
In this block where Bolton Bakery is located, no black businesses was this block of all the black businesses was in the block right below us. As I said, 2 funeral homes, a black barber shop, a food hall. There was a little building, if you've ever noticed in that little alleyway, it's a little building, that was a cab stand. You had Frank Frazier, Nelson Cab that operated that.
One thing that always comes to mind, I think I had been in Buffalo, because you expect the North to be a little more progressive. So when I got to Buffalo, I remember walking down the street in Buffalo. The first thing that I heard, somebody screamed out of their window, the N-word. So I was sort of taken aback by that, but it wasn't something that just bothered me because I was raised in the South. I had heard that word before.
I didn't experience a lot of racism, and I think that was partly because I played sports. And anybody that's ever played sports, you become part of a team core, and athletes can understand that. You become brothers on the field. So,
and even within that, there were some successful black people here. Jenkins Funeral Home, for instance, who has handled the bodies of my family since they opened in 1911, were very prosperous. They did a good job, and they also fed back to the community. Back in those days, believe it or not, if there were any medical emergency, there were no specific ambulances to pick those people up. The funeral homes ran the EMS units. They actually had a unit other than the hearse that they would go out, get the person, and take them to the hospital. And of course, they were not trained in any type of first aid, so you had to survive the ride to the hospital, or sometimes you would expire on the way. As president of the Student Government Association at Newnan High School, the advisor decided that she wanted to have a dinner for the officers of the SGA, and she chose Sprayberry's restaurant. Typically, black people had to go to the back door and get any items that you wanted to get there. I had a sister-in-law who was a cook there. So we went that night to Sprayberry's, and we walked in the front door. Of course, I had to go in the front door. I'm the president. I had to go to the meeting. And there was no incident, but my sister-in-law almost fainted when she looked out and saw me. She said, "What is that boy doing up there?" So I thought that was quite a story, but she almost passed out because she said, "No, he's not supposed to be up there." So that was the tenor of what was happening in Cuyahoga County at that time.
I remember Mr. Finney Mitchell especially now that I work at the hospital. I remember him leading a lot of protests. You know, a lot of people forget that we were not able to be admitted to Noonan Hospital, and this was in the 70s, without the protesting led by Mr. Mitchell and Hosea Williams, because we had another hospital which was where we were only supposed to be able to go. But 2 hospitals here in Noonan, we had people working there, but could not, if they got sick, they couldn't be treated there. So because of their efforts, I'm able to work where I work. And we're able to go to the hospital, one hospital here in Noonan. I also remember, which I'm kind of proud of this, my mother worked at Noonan Hospital in the laundry. And so when I think about her role there and the things that I have been able to accomplish and the role that I have now at Noonan Hospital, it really makes me proud at Piedmont Noonan Hospital, it makes me proud to be where I am. And it also lets me know that I stand on the shoulders of many people. My mother, the nurses, Miss Mo, Miss Thompson, Miss Brenda, who were some of the first Black nurses here, and Miss Carter that I can remember at Coweta General at the time.
There were prominent members. There was, I believe, our first Black council person, Mr. Lynch. There were activists in the community, one by the name of Finney C. Mitchell, who was the NAACP guy at that time. And of course, I said the local Black business owners, the Jenkins and those people. Miss Newell owned the little cafe. So those people helped pave the way for what we realize now in Noonan County. Wilburn Clay, who was quite active in the community. Robert Woods, when he moved back from California. These are the people, and then more recently, you had the Willie Pritchards. So this was what took place in order to make things better and a little bit more equal. And it was a transition, but it was more or less a peaceful transition because they basically dialogued rather than to do some of the extreme things that some places, even back to Noonan High School when we integrated, it was relatively peaceful. I recall one day specifically, the principal called me to the office. I was in class. Melvin, can you come to the office? So I came to the office. When I got there, David Gay, a prominent reporter for Channel 5 News, was there. And he said, Melvin, the news reporters are here from Atlanta because somebody called them and told them that we were having a racial riot here today. I want you to carry him around and let him see how we operate and show him, just be totally candid. So I carried him around, students were in class, students would participate, there was no riot. But then there were a faction of folks during that time who decided to protest. Our white community members, they carried signs because they did not particularly want us there. The percentages were 60% white, 40% black. And so that is the brainchild that brought about Heritage High School. In fact, I had the opportunity during the time, I worked construction during the summer. My brother worked for a company called Enco Builders. We built Heritage High School. And I had the opportunity to actually work on that high school that at that time I couldn't have gone to.
When I think of Black history, my Morehouse brother, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. comes to mind. But we've been blessed and so fortunate to not have to go so far for examples of Black history right here locally. we've had such marvelous examples of Black history. You know, Reverend R.W. Sutton, Reverend J.W. Russell Jr., you know, when it comes to business, Mr. William Newell, you know, so many countless individuals have made great contributions. Mr. Calhoun at Calhoun Store, one of the first stores in our community, Mr. Atwater and his store. There are many examples of Black history right here in the local community.
Martin Luther King.
Yes, ma'am.
Some of those projects are Roscoe Jenkins' home, and one street is Octavia Place, which is my mother, not me.
Okay.
They're called Cliff Circle. That was an elderly Black man. Cliff Stevenson was his name, but Cliff Circle is named after him.
I grew up on the east side of Newnan, and the person that I remember most then was Miss Verona Rosser. She was very instrumental in, I would say, the lives of most of the young children on that side of town. She ran the youth center. So she had summer programs, and she also, you know, she taught us to have a sense of pride. And she also, it was an opportunity for us to learn from those who are older than us and still be involved in our community.
It was over in Rocky Mount, a guy named Mr. Buster Sewell. I don't think we're related to him. I think he's another set, but he was the first man. He owned a tire shop. He repaired tires back between Dutzersville and Rocky Mount. That's when I was a kid. We used to go there. Mr. Buster, he had his own soda machine, Coke machines out front. He was basically the first man that I knew that actually owned something of his own. So he had a garage. We talking like in the early 80s, which was unheard of back then for Black people to actually own something.
A little cliche, but I think of my husband. A lot of the things he's done, Pastor Tamarcus T. Cook, a lot of things that he's done have made an impact not only locally, but worldwide, from Michigan to Puerto Rico. So I think of him, and I think of also people who have took on the challenge to do something different from some of the local people in the area also.
So currently I serve as the interim president for the Coweta County NAACP. We're in the process of reactivating that chapter. So we're close to our 50 members minimal in order to make that happen. And one of the reasons that was important to me was because I remember growing up, I can start with Miss Josephine Rush. I'm not sure if she was the NAACP president, but I know that she was an activist. And she was really integral in getting people to vote. And she stood up for the people here in Coweta County. And then Reverend Grady Vaughn was an NAACP president, as I had said before. He means a lot to me because of the relationship that I developed with him as I was growing up here in this community. And then there's Reverend Jeter, who carried on after Reverend Vaughn and made great strides with the NAACP. And let me not forget Pastor Cook and Pastor Tuck. The organization dismantled for a while, but I think that it's extremely important for us to have an active chapter of the NAACP here, because there are a lot of things in the county that we need to stand up for, and that we need to see happen. And my goal is to leave a positive impact here. And it's really, really important because I grew up here. You know, it's one thing to say, if I go to a different place, I want to leave an impact. But having grown up here in this community, I've seen a lot of change, but I know that there's still a lot of change that needs to happen. And I want to do what I can to make that, to lead the pack, to make that happen.
I often think about my teachers. When I was at elementary school, African-American teachers, Miss Talley, Miss Seldom, Miss Wickerson, those ladies who actually instill in me the value of learning, the value of growing, along with my parents, who always instilled in learning too. When you got home from school, you had to do your homework. You changed out of your school clothes, and then you had to do your homework. So Black history is just, I can just recognize and see the progress that Blacks have made. We have a ways to go, of course, but there certainly has been progress that has been made.
The core of the community has always been the Black church, and my family has always attended church. So those ministers, those leaders that, you know, took the mantle and lived a life, those were some of the most iconic people that I looked up to as community leaders. Everything I knew was church. My dad was a pastor or preacher later in his life. And we grew up, you know, outside of home. We grew up going to church all the time. And that was my interaction with leaders.
Like some of the stuff that you're doing, that's Black history to me, because actually it's trailblazing and it's never been done. Also, I can look at someone like my father, who started back in the cemetery with a shovel and a pick like 29 years ago. He can be considered Black history to me. Black history, my grandfather, who with a 6th grade education, quit school and ended up to be, you know, get his GED, go on to be a police chief. So he's Black history to me.
One of the traditions that I have been blessed to witness and to benefit from in my lifetime has been the annual Martin Luther King Jr. Parade, which was started by the Eastern Stars and the Masons here, to my understanding, in the city of Newnan. And over the years, that parade has truly captured the essence of not only Martin Luther King Jr., but the essence of those in our community, the work of those in our community. It's highlighted ministries in our community, it's highlighted businesses in our community, and more than anything, it's brought us together. And so that moment alone, that's one capstone event locally here in our community that we are most proud of.
The people I follow, I like what Rod Williams doing. I really like what he's doing. As far as the real estate, that's somebody I keep my eye on and stuff like that. I also like what Noah Cameron is doing as far as building and stuff. We don't have a lot of Black contractors. We don't have a lot of Black builders and stuff like that. So I like what he's doing as well. Couple of guys, I like what Rodney Scott he has going on as far as like programs for the kids and all of that. I like what he's doing as well. I like what you're doing as well, because you kind of get out and you kind of get active and kind of get hands-on with the community, which is something that we all need. So y'all some guys that I look and pattern myself after, because that's Black history to me and what's presently needed, and I feel that we all need.
DeMarcus Cook for one, Bolton's Bakery, DJ's Grocery. Those are only few, because I'm not originally from Georgia, but the ones that I know.
So first of all, the funeral home down the street, which is Black owned, of course, and you know. And just thinking about some of our teachers, going back to the teachers, some of our local teachers, which was actually in Meriwether County, Ms. Beckgood and Mr. Beckgood. I mean, I think about so many things that I learned from Mrs. Beckgood that I think about today. Some of the things that she taught us how to, you know, carry ourselves as young women. And I think because of her and a couple of the other teachers, our Black teachers, I think that's the reason why I became an educator, and was an educator for about 20 years. But I just think about some of our local businesses here too. I think about Kenya. She was one of the first people that actually allowed me to set up my ice cream cart at her place. She's a Black and local owned business, which is right down the street, Greenhouse Mercantile. Yeah.
For me, I look at Frios of Newnan. There's Sonia Matthews. She's a classmate of mine, and I really inspire her. I look up to her because I see that there's not that many African American business owners that would tap into a business such as like coffee, teas, pops, which is the Frios of Newnan. She really sticks out to me. I'm so pleased and happy that she actually stepped out to do something her heart's desire that we typically do not see in the Coweta County or Meriwether County area.
I see more and more Black businesses in this town starting to emerge.
It looks more diverse to me. I'm so pleased when I drive around Newnan to see the posters on the wall of individuals, African Americans, whites, just these posters that they have around Newnan. And that tells me that they're trying to embrace diversity. So that's really, really good to see.
Never give up, even in the face of adversity. You will always have a struggle. You will always have the deck stacked against you. So it just taught me perseverance. It taught me to be strong-willed. Black history also taught me to accept and embrace who I am. And there's nothing wrong with being Black. Actually, it's a privilege to be Black because we come from a strong, tried, diverse group of people. You can put us anywhere and we will make anything happen. Sort of like I call Black people like instant grits. If you pour water on us, we're gonna make something happen. Either way it goes.
Think about some of the things that my grandmother said to me as I was growing up. Now, I when I'm going through things, kind of reflect back on my ancestors. And you have to thank them for the things that they did to help us get to where we are now. And I actually talk to them quite often. I thank them for small things on just when I'm faced with different things, but just say thank you for helping me to make it through this. Now, of course, I have to give credit to our Lord and Savior because He is first and foremost the one who has helped me to get to where I am. And then after that is the ancestors and my family. We can't forget that. We can't forget our past.
It has taught me as well to know that I can do it no matter what the obstacles may come my way. It lets me know that I can still do whatever I set my mind and my heart to do, because I know that favor, when you have favor that surpasses all anything, just put your knowledge and your willpower to do what it is it has to be done to get and take care of things.
I see the strides and the efforts made by civil rights people that were active at the time. And what it did is placed a foundation for me to be able to move forward, me and many others to be able to move forward in our life and in our career, in our business.
Black history taught me, I guess we'll go back to the saying, us as Black people, if we set our mind to it, we can. If we believe we can achieve, and we can do it. No, it's not an answer.
It has taught me to be strong in what I believe in and to never conform. It's taught me to just believe in what we were taught over the years and believe that, a lot of things are possible when we thought that it couldn't be possible. Being a Black mom, especially a mom of 2 boys, I have a daughter as well, but being a Black mom, just looking at some of the things that we actually had to teach them and some of the conversations that we had to have in privacy that some people don't ever have to have those conversations, but it's taught us to still stand steadfast in our word and stand steadfast in what we believe in.
Taught me how to challenge the stereotype or the, prejudice, if you will, of Black people, of my people. Being young, being a woman in education, we're told that we should not pursue further a lot of times. And I think that Black history empowers me to challenge the stigma of Black women today. So just challenges me to be different, to live and pursue my dreams boldly.
For us is to know the history to how we can apply the history, what all we have learned from our forefathers, what have instilled in us, and let us know that Black history is so rich. There's so much in Black history that we have not even touched the surface with, and that we can expound on and go forward with and say, hey, she did this for us to we can acknowledge the history and pass it on to our children and our children from this point forward.
We need to tell our story more. Our stories it's important to share our stories with our kids and reflect on the stories that our grandparents shared with us, because without those stories, we forget what has happened or the things that we have accomplished in the past. And those stories need to continue on and on and on. So tell your story.